Welcome to this week's edition of CEO Corner, part 2 of the legislative session. In the first session, Darrell Scott, our Vice President for Public Policy and Communications, talked about those issues that passed during the session and the effects on businesses. In this session, we want to talk about the things that we left on the table, those issues that did not get resolved this year, what caused them to stall, and what effects it'll have on businesses. I think the first issue, Darrell, we really want to talk about is tort reform. And, we had pretty much been told early in the session that it was going to be one of the first pieces of legislation out of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Didn't happen. Waited on the House to pass the bill. Senate finally got to it. What caused the breakdown and what caused the bill to stall?
Well, if you look back last year, the business community was able to elevate the debate in the Senate last year and had a couple hearings with Senator Larry Martin as the subcommittee chair even last session. Went through all summer and fall and had numerous hearings and testimony taken, and then went through the same exercise through much of the session. But really, at the end of the day, I think it took the better part of a year and a half to get that bill just out of a subcommittee, where we should have been able to get it to the full committee level a whole lot quicker than what we got.
Issues that were preeminent that didn't get. I know that a lot of talk around non-economic damages, also seat belts, and also punitive damages.
Yeah, those are the three critical issues, and I think a lot of the folks who serve on that subcommittee question maybe the need for tort reform, maybe don't see the impacts to businesses and business owners, day in and day out, of how a punitive damage cap would be beneficial to our economic climate here in South Carolina.
Well, and the other thing, too, that kind of goes to that, it's not tort reform, but they almost go hand in hand, is that there were 2 Workers' Comp Commission positions that came open during this year. The Chamber supported Susan Barden, who is a current commissioner over there, and we also proposed putting Louis Creel, who chaired the governor's task force on workers' comp. What happened there? One got approved, one didn't get approved.
That's right. Well, that's probably the biggest disappointment looking back over the last 6 months, probably the biggest disappointment that the business community as a whole should feel. They spent the whole session not having hearings for the commissioners. I think they had about 10 or 12 different Senate Judiciary Committee meetings where they didn't bring those nominations forward, even though Governor Sanford issued their nominations on February 3rd, early in the session. But in the late hour, Senate Judiciary met and called up both of them to come testify, but spent the entire 1 hour that was dedicated to the hearings of both Louis Creel and Susan Barden on Susan Barden, who was already on the commission, confirmed her and basically ran out the clock and filibustered Louis's nomination. It's the first time. There have been several business leaders in the last 4, 5, 6 years who have not been confirmed by the Senate, but this was the first time that the Senate Judiciary Committee simply ignored a nomination by the governor. And really, the business community should be very disappointed that we don't have a lot of activity in the political process a lot of times from our business community and our business leaders of serving on boards and commissions, but when they do, we need to support their nominations and try to move them forward.
Well, I know that what was interesting about this debate, and even though we supported Commissioner Barden, she was a 20-year servant under President Pro Tem McConnell in Senate Judiciary. Her nomination got through, and Lewis's got stopped. So
that's right.
An odd set of circumstances, and really makes you think about the whole political process and the fairness within the process. One last thing we want to talk a little bit. This year and last year, really, it's been a problem, or we've had problems with the state budget. A lot of it evolved out of 2 years ago. The state budget jumped from a $5.6 or $7 billion budget to a $7.1 billion. Really kind of grew out of control. And with the downturn plus the excessive growth we've had, we faced budget deficits in the neighborhood of over, I think probably $1.3, $1.4 billion over the last 2 years. We had legislation over there that we thought could help control that with spending limits. It died. What happened?
Well, we got a bill through the Senate this year, and what the Senate proposed to do was the Cornell-Felder method that you're familiar with from the mid-'90s into the early 2000s that they undid because it worked so well. But basically, they looked at what you took in the last year and what you're projecting to take in the coming year, and spent 75% of that projection and put 25% away in a rainy day fund. We were able to get that through the Senate. The House wanted something more restrictive than that, and they passed a straight CPI plus population limit on spending. They passed it late in the session, and really the House and Senate were on two very different wavelengths when it came to how they wanted to enact some sort of spending cap, and got late in the process. The budget became a pretty critical battle in both the House and Senate, and really we just got time called on us at the end of the session. I do think that this is one of those issues that's probably not going away. Right. That as the economy turns around, that they will have to see some sort of limits placed on spending to try to grow at a more even-keeled rate.
Yeah. Darrell, thank you for being with us and talking a little bit about what happened during the session. I'd just like to invite all the people out there, particularly in the business communities, our local chambers. Our grassroots meetings will start August the 3rd. You can go to our website and see where we'll be holding meetings across the state to start developing our legislative agenda for the 2011-2012 session. We invite you to come. We invite you to come and bring your best ideas, those issues that you're facing that need to be addressed from a legislative standpoint, in hopes that we can create a business environment that will make it profitable for you to operate your business.